So if you're a fan of Attack on Titan and you tend to get really emotionally invested in media, you may not want to watch this, because I really aggressively rip this one. Spoilers, insults, guns blazing, it's not going to be pleasant for anyone involved. There's your warning, listen to it or don't. 3, 2, 1, let's go. My relationship with Attack on Titan has been a strange one over the years. At first, I liked it. I thought the premise was interesting, and appreciated how it didn't shy away from some of the darker elements of its setting. The action scenes were enjoyable as well, and I was curious about the mystery of the world. It was never my favorite series, but it was one I would check out whenever there was a new release. Even in that time, however, anyone could see how the elements that made Attack on Titan stand out could turn into something terrible. From the beginning, Erwin was a moron to rival the shonens, and his ability to turn into a titan seemed like it could very quickly render the vertical gear irrelevant and become some narrative equivalent to the Sharingan. More importantly, though, and I think most people will agree, there is a fine line between realism and obnoxiously overbearing hopelessness. An undeniable part of Attack on Titan's shtick was that it didn't shy away from death, even with major characters. But, of course, this is a double-edged sword. It certainly can add a sense of gravitas to your setting, and facilitate deeply cutting drama for everyone involved. However, if you kill off too many people, you also run the risk of cheapening its effect, or just killing off everyone that's interesting. And if that happens, you're left with nothing but a dreary display of dipshits hacking each other to pieces. Ultimately, in my book, this was the fate of Attack on Titan. In spite of the struggle, it failed to provide anything worth rooting for, or in the end, any personality to make sticking around worth it. This wasn't really the case in the beginning, but it became a lot more of a problem as the story went on. To emphasize, this is not to say that I'm fundamentally opposed to darker settings in media, or even necessarily hopeless ones. I only ask to be entertained. But screaming that you failed, and that 80 people died for nothing, combined with 30 pages of an obnoxious child boorishly ignoring the very obvious moral complications of his setting, isn't really entertaining except as unintentional comedy. And that joke gets old fast. There was more to the chapter than that, of course, but there was also that. Aaron, you idiot! Oh my god, why? Aaron! No, Aaron! No! I need to calm down and gather information from the enemy. 2 minutes later, I'm Sasuke Uchiha. And it just goes on and on like that. He's loud, weak, and bailed out by powers beyond his control that he hasn't earned. That's a recipe for disaster. Humorously, one of the few times he acts responsibly early on and trusts in his comrades results in everyone getting killed. Oh, I see. Just focus on one eyeball to make it grow back faster. So that's how it is, huh? Okay. Quite wisely, the narrative chooses to distance itself from him, and it has some good moments. I would describe early Attack on Titan as being a flawed, but good series. But at some point, it stops contributing positively on this end. At some point, it just becomes a test of patience, and then it becomes more flawed and less good. In my case, they killed off all the characters I liked, and made the rest subject to the whims of fucking douchebags. Everyone with even a shred of potential was railroaded into submission, and the result of this was a tedious slog of backstabbings conducted by interchangeable dullards for the sake of self-interest and petty cruelty. And if I wanted to see that, I would just turn on the evening news. I thought to myself, all the characters with plot leverage that I like are gone, I don't really care about Jean or Connie, I already know probably 80% of the mystery present, why am I still watching? So I made the reasonable decision as a consumer and stopped reading, and stopped thinking about it. But then I saw that the series had ended, and people were making quite a hullabaloo about it. Aaron's fate revealed, everyone cares so much about Aaron. Does Attack on Titan deserve a better ending? Is Attack on Titan fascist? I'll admit I was curious. So I decided to power through and read the whole series, and I saw some interesting things. I saw people act like this guy was more practical to the Survey Corps than its leader. I saw them cast Mr. Soft Ethnic Cleansing in the Jesus light, and I thought that was the bottom of the barrel. But no, not quite. Despite my astonishment and mild contempt while reading, I was able to derive some amusement from the situation. It was violence, after all. And it was so ridiculous that these people were being cast in a sympathetic light, I couldn't help but wonder if the author was taking the piss out of everyone. I would say at that point, don't tell me if he isn't, I don't care, and then cackle for a good 10 minutes before continuing onwards. A character named Ymir plays a central role later on, but I'm sorry to say, neither Loki nor Thor made an appearance. The story would have been better if they had. Then I reached the ending, and like I said, there was a bit of controversy about it. Some people say the ending made sense, or that it was perfectly bittersweet. No, it wasn't. It was fucking awful and fucking stupid, and those two things only. So, real quick, the Titans basically become the Sharingan, and the winners are whoever has the oldest and meanest Titan power. The people with Titan powers used to rule the world, but because of King White Guilt II, they lost their throne and most of their abilities. Of course, the rest of the world took the opportunity to be the bigger man and victimize them relentlessly. But, when given the chance at their original might, many of the Titanfolk do in fact leap at the opportunity to become the monsters everyone said they were, seemingly justifying the world's fear, and triggering a vicious cycle of hate. What a tricky situation. But don't worry, people. Erwin has a solution. And that solution is...
fucking murder everyone! Kill them for talking shit about the Dreamcast!
That's right. In the war between Titanland and rival asshole territory, he's going to use his abilities to fucking literally step on all life outside his island and squish them into red paste beneath him, like a cartoonish parody of a supervillain. Of course, the Scooby-Doo Brigade is opposed to his plan, and they have Sharingans too, so an epic fight breaks out. And, I won't lie, the fight is pretty dumb. Oh no, Erwin's skeleton looks like it had too many Krabby Patties. Frankly, it was bittersweet seeing this. It's a dumb fight, which is what I wanted, but you don't care about any of the sides fighting. Come on, who's honestly been tuning in for the likes of Jean and Connie? Armin became irredeemable to me after his survival became contingent on Erwin's sacrifice, and this little fumble really sealed the deal. Mikasa is cheap combat waifu bait, with a personality of stale bread. If you're emotionally invested in her, I apologize, and your feelings are valid. But to me, she's not very engaging. And even though I don't like Erwin and his insipid pontification, I can't really muster the will to hate him when the opposition has been characterized by people like this. So, it's the battle of the ages. The generic ensemble of side characters fighting for awful people hiding behind children against the genocidal protagonist that looks like a Halloween prop. Who's going to come out on top? Biff. Pow. Wham. There was one moment in the battle that I genuinely liked. While Armin is putzing, lost in thoughts like, oh, maybe I can't save Erwin after all, he gets eaten. And while the others are shouting at each other, wondering what to do, one woman just rushes forward, past the enemies, straight to Erwin's weak point, and is like, what is wrong with you people? Just fucking kill him already. She wraps his neck in dynamite, gets the trigger ready, and pushes in, but then gets stabbed through by another Titan, and the trigger magically flies away, even though she already had a grip on the thing and was pushing down. Oh, Piek, oh what a tangled web we weave. So, the dynamite remains undetonated, and the genocide continues. While this is happening, there are some scenes of the Titanfolk Eldians and rival Marleyans actually achieving some sense of unity. There have been a few of these moments scattered throughout the series. Clearly, the author is trying to backtrack a little, but at this point it's too little too late. Like, what are you doing? You think anyone who's been reading is going to buy this crap? As if. By the way, at this point, most of humanity has been squished to death. That's cool. So, spoilers, the side characters win. I could explain how, but does it really matter? They decapitate him, convince the rival group not to kill them, and help to guide the survivors into a new era with courage and hope. It's a wonderfully smooth ending that I'm sure would have been very gratifying if you cared about anyone present. I didn't. But that's not why I'm making this video. If this was just a generic ending, I wouldn't be making incendiary comments on it and attracting hate on the internet. No, there's something worse about this conclusion. For Eren had a secret purpose while he was destroying humanity. Specifically, he was setting himself up as a villain for the others to kill, so that they could be recognized as heroes whom the rival group and the others were indebted to, so that they wouldn't be attacked. He then, upon death, removes Titan power from the world, eliminating a major threat and freeing everyone in the process. What a twist! Oh, what a twist! You mean to say that he didn't actually hate the person he spent over half of the series very clearly not hating? I'm in shock like a weasel in an electric chair. He wanted to set them up as heroes, and all he needed for this was to slaughter 80% of humanity. But wait a second, that doesn't make any sense. If Eren believed that the rest of the world would feel indebted to them, then there was no need to kill the rest of humanity, because then they wouldn't use force. They would understand that the threat was eliminated, and starting with the rival territory, work with the others peaceably, right? That's what feeling indebted means. He could have just threatened the world and attacked Marley for the same effect. And if he didn't believe that, then what was the point of the plan in the first place? Why not just go all the way and complete the slaughter? If eradicating others is necessary for peace, it only makes sense to finish the job and live on. Otherwise, you'd just be leaving enemies for your descendants. And 20% is still a lot of people. Are you willing to take that risk? Either way, Eren comes across as being supremely wishy-washy in retrospect. The only other reason for him doing these things is that he saw himself doing them in the past while he was connected to a bullshit psychic plot stream beyond time. In other words, the plot asserts, he was destined to do it from the very beginning. Freedom? Self-determination? Pfft. I saw this in a dream. And it's even dumber than that, because according to Eren, one of the other guys wasn't supposed to die when he did in the vision. So deviations are possible, but Eren didn't make any because... Even with all the power in the world, he is still weak. Here's what Eren should have done. He should have dropped the stupid cut-rate Lelouch crap, seduced Mikasa, and used the Titans to destroy the other nations' military centers and infrastructure, softening them up for conquest while persuading the others to join him. He could have gotten at least a few peeps with his abilities, anyways. Then he should have consolidated power and worked to conquer the world without wholesale destruction, unlocking every potential application of the Titan's power, overturning every absurd psychic restriction placed on it, and bolstering his abilities with the plundered scientific advancements of other nations to establish a new empire of Titans forever. And then they'd have a dance party in the city, to safety dance, by men without hats. He'd be happier, Mikasa would be happier, and frankly, it would be more entertaining than what we actually got. Because once people realize what Eren's scheme was, all of them just break down in gratitude for what he did for them. Not kidding. What a man. He told us to live long, but what about you? Thanks for being a mass murderer. Is it a joke? No, it's just stupid. Bear in mind, these are the people who were fighting against him just a few pages ago. They disagreed with him to the point that they were willing to risk their own lives. They did, effectively, become the heroes of this story. And yet now, it seems like they almost agree with him. If we win, we live. If we lose, we die. If we don't fight, we can't win. Fight. Fight. This fight won't end until either the Eldians or the rest of the world is wiped out. Maybe what Aaron had said was right. Historia's handwriting is so beautiful. See, now you're starting to get why people made a bit of a hubbub. In the end, not one of them had the moral character to stand up and say that what Aaron did was wrong. And in my mind, that makes them guilty too. If even one of them had just called out his excuses as a load of crap, it wouldn't have been so bad. But no, despite all the conflict, all the bickering up until this point, now they're united on the worst possible front. Fantastic. 3 years after the battle, they're going to the islands to talk to the protagonist's surviving, newly militarized followers and work to establish an alliance. An alliance between them and the world's remaining survivors. Oh god, those outfits. What, are we all fighting pilots in World War II? Yeah, they joined forces with Aaron's underlings, the ones they've been fighting for most of the final arc. They just resolved their issues like that. The arc is complete. Now they're out for peace with everyone else. So I suppose we're left to guess which flavor of Aaron's stupidity prevails off-screen. Remember that if they're successful and the message is that people can coexist, then Aaron killed 80% of mankind superfluously. Think about how absurd that is. 80% of humanity died for potentially nothing, and he's treated sympathetically in this final chapter. No! That's dumb! Oh, and on top of his genocide, Aaron also apparently went out of his way to destroy all the nature and ecosystems he could too. Because why not? Why not just kill Bambi and friends while you're at it, right? You know, whenever people talk about Infinity War or Endgame, they make fun of Thanos, like, he doesn't understand science, heh. No, everyone just shit on Aaron. He's the real problem. It's bad, people. That's really the long and short of it. And what a waste of the Titans' power to just wish it away like that. Like, yeah, the Titans did some terrible things throughout the story, but that's only because everyone that used them was as dumb as a bag of rocks. Actually think about the potential of the Titans we've seen and had implied for us throughout the story, beyond that of a weapon. In their psychic plot stream, they're capable of storing the image, mind, and personalities of others. They can make their bodies immune to disease, and in at least one instance, they literally resurrect the dead. Theoretically speaking, they hold the secret to eternal life, and that's just the start of their potential. If everyone just calmed down and thought about what they had, things could have been a lot better. But no, that's not how Teen Titan operates. Just throw it all in the garbage, like cavemen destroying a television. It would have been different if this was a completely eldritch power that was beyond human comprehension, but it's not. The first human host clearly has more influence than whatever this thing is, and as we see in the story, even that can be changed and manipulated. Yeah, at one point during the narrative, when Aaron is getting the power he needs to murder everyone, he has to convince a small child to side with him. And this child was a slave and had Stockholm Syndrome, so she's not all there. And Aaron is telling her to let him destroy everything, saying that she should choose freedom from the world. And at that point, I grabbed both ends of the computer and spoke into the monitor. No, don't pick freedom. Freedom in this setting is a load of crap. Even the other characters acknowledge it. That's the real message of Attack on Titan. You can't trust people, because at bottom, they're too weak, malicious, or lazy to do the right thing. That, combined with some truly pathetic attempts at backtracking from the less pleasant implications of this. Expect nothing, receive less. It's not a message I'm inherently opposed to, but it's been done more competently, and in a better story. This story is obnoxious, unlikable, and most damning of all, predictable. It comes to be predictable. Aaron is so ridiculously transparent with his feelings and over-the-top douchebag act, you could see his secret intent from a continent away. And it sucks. See, M. Night Shyamalan's twists are bad because they're arbitrary and don't make any sense. Attack on Titan's twists are bad because they're so predictable that they're not even really twists, but the narrative expects you to care anyways when they lift up the curtain. You want to know what a good clue is that an advanced civilization exists outside your setting? Having one of the characters call something an ape, and the others not knowing what that is. Or having one of the characters being able to read a script that no one else can. You want to know what a not good clue is? Having one of your central antagonists scream in baseball terminology during his assault on the lead cast when there clearly isn't a Little League field anywhere in the area. To all the people that were genuinely taken aback by this reveal, what were you thinking when you saw this line? That the royal family was playing bat and ball in the Crystal Caves? That Babe Ruth was a member of the military police? Come on. So instead you have several dozen chapters where the narrative is teasing, oh, what's the deal with Aaron, man of mystery, when really, Attack on Titan is not going to win any awards for subtlety. I know what Aaron's intent is. It's really not that difficult to suss out. It would be more of a twist for me if there wasn't a twist and he really did just go crazy. That's why I dislike him as a character later on, even when he sheds his immediately enraging childishness. Not because he's immoral, but because he's predictable. An obnoxious, shallow, transparent bore of a villain. People say he developed so much as a character. No, he didn't. He just threw out a fistful of platitudes and then treated people exactly as he would have beforehand. And he's applying his childlike mentality as is to yet another problem. Where's the development? That he's now a completely humorless sack of shit? You'll excuse me for not being impressed. Depending on your perspective, Aaron may be justified, but he is not sympathetic, and one of the narrative's biggest blunders is pretending otherwise. The later battles are no better. Sometimes they manage to pull out some fresh tactics, but what does it matter? You know the narrative is going to bail out Aaron no matter what happens. Even the show's most basic conceit, that anyone can and may die, is aggressively shoved to the side when convenient. And, well, I really do think the best example of this was earlier in the narrative, when people were forced to choose between sacrificing Erwin or Armin. Believe me, I'm not just saying this because I like Erwin. It truly is, I think, emblematic of how this story operates when the chips are down. They can only save one of these two by giving them a serum and special Titan power, and they have to choose right away. Erwin, the leader of the Survey Corps, or this guy. Levi has the serum, and he says that they're picking Erwin. In response, Aaron gets pissy, because he wants to save his childhood friend and has the mind of a 2-year-old. Mikasa joins him, because of course she does. But other people join in too, and they all give perfectly rational, reasonable explanations for why they have to pick Erwin. He's the leader of the Survey Corps, a symbol for mankind, which is important as their group is becoming more politically important in the setting. He's more experienced, more charismatic, has a better mind for politics and combat, and would probably be able to put the special power of the Titan to better use. The decision is clear. But then Aaron comes in, raving about how Armin is useful too, and that means they have to pick him. Yeah, Armin is their boy genius strategist, who pulls strategies out of his butt, except when he's having a mental breakdown and needs a 5-minute break in the middle of combat. Which, you know, is really what you want in a military outfit. But when he works, he generates the greatest ideas. And what were some of those brilliant deductions? Hey, the Titans can't move at night, so why don't we do our operations at night? Hey, we were attacked by a blonde female Titan that inexplicably spared me upon checking my face. And just a few chapters ago, one of the only blonde female characters in this setting, who happens to be the only surviving character to not join the Survey Corps, and also happens to look exactly like the female Titan, had one of her only positive interactions with me. Maybe there's a connection. You're a fucking genius, Armin. Aaron, pick up this conveniently hole-shaped rock with your stupid cheating monster fists. Boom! Now, are all of his moments that stupid? It varies. But if you read the story, Erwin is also capable of the tactics, to a very effective degree. As in, if the plot didn't keep bullshitting in new rules, the entire Titan shifting squad would have been eradicated. And he is more practiced. That matters, especially in a setting that emphasizes pragmatism. But not even looking at the sheer disparity of content in the two arguments, there's a deeper thematic difference in their tones. The senior staff speak clearly and logically for what they think is best for mankind. Eren and Mikasa come across like children throwing a tantrum and are obviously just acting like this because Armin's their childhood friend. And they're called out on this. Do you two think you're the only ones that are suffering? That you're the only ones that count? Everyone beyond that wall died fighting against the Titans, scared, but charging for what they believed in, no matter the cost. They made a sacrifice for humanity. Now it's your turn. And Eren and Mikasa immediately go to pieces over this, because they know they have no real response. Armin might be clever, but he can't compete with Erwin. This is the moment when Attack on Titan is called to task on its premise. It's an opportunity for the story to show us a truly meaningful death, that of a central character, and to show these two leads that it's time to grow the hell up. It's an opportunity above all others, a perfect narrative flourish to send off one of Eren's dearest friends. Now, it's time. And they fail miserably. Levi pivots 90 degrees and chooses to save Armin instead, even though he said twice before that they were saving Erwin and understood the reasons for doing so, even though he knew the consequences for doing otherwise could be catastrophic. Even though everything in his character dictates that he should pick Erwin, he picks Armin. A soldier stares at him in disbelief, as though to embody the audience, or perhaps to subtly mock them. Levi dissembles a bit, and they cram in some pictures to try and bullshit in an excuse for him, but we all know the real reason Armin got picked here. Armin got picked because he was more important to the plot. Full stop. It's because Armin was more central to the author's plans, and when it came right down to it, he didn't have the guts to pull the trigger and kill someone that actually mattered. Every other explanation fails to hold up to basic scrutiny, or at least they fall apart in hindsight against the rest of the narrative. Erwin had regrets. Yeah, so did everyone else, including Armin, that Erwin wasn't picked. Yes, really. This is right before the final battle, incidentally. Plenty of extra time to get his crap together. Oh, you mean he has the same problems he obviously exhibited earlier in the story? No way. It's not possible. Erwin was suicidal. Yeah, well, what do you call this? Also, that didn't stop Reiner. Erwin was about to achieve his dream and thus lose his edge. Armin, by contrast, still had his dream of seeing the ocean. This is the big one. Erwin was about to achieve his dream in reaching the basement, and as a result of that, all of his tactical know-how would just go fucking kaput. First of all, this is a mischaracterization. Erwin's dream was not to reach some smelly basement in the outer district. It was to understand the world. The basement was just a vehicle to achieve that. And it's fair to say that even if he reached the basement, there would still be more questions about what lay beyond. What's Marley's deal? Why is the world so opposed to them? What's the origin of the Titans? There was still further to go beyond the basement. Even then, it should be obvious. Also, if dreams were necessary to continue, then Armin would have been useless after this. Levi wanted to let Erwin go from the pain of living. Oh? Wasn't a significant part of the narrative about refuting that mentality, before and after? And also, that takes priority over everything else, over every decision before this one? He just abandoned all of that at the drop of a hat? Don't be absurd. Levi cares about the future of humanity. more than he does the feelings and sentiment of others. That's his character. He knows Erwin's value going forward. And the idea that he just folded on this critical decision because of some arbitrary flip of the arm is absurd. And yet, it is a reality. Levi isn't a moron, but he is in this scene because the narrative needs him to be. I'll reiterate, this was a decision made strictly for narrative convenience. It was done simply to set up Armin as the hero the world needs and to provide an easy excuse for this brooding pissant taking over the Survey Corps. And really, many of the life or death conclusions in this story can be judged by how convenient they make the narrative. If Ymir believes that there's a future within the walls, why the fuck did she go and sacrifice herself to save Reiner and Bertolt? Oh, because the next 2 story arcs had to happen, otherwise she would have spilled the beans too early. Who cares if it doesn't make sense? Why didn't Reiner die at literally any of the other times he should have? Because he had to push that generic violence breeds violence message later on. Bertolt certainly wasn't going to do it. Why did Levi survive this? Because having Mikasa be the only good fighter in the last battle would be just a little too unbelievable for even this story. Why did Erwin die? To let Armin and Eren take over. Come on, this guy wouldn't have joined him if Erwin was still around. Erwin threatened the teenage children's supremacy, so the author publicly executed him. It's that simple, folks. And the worst part about it is that this whole thing could have been completely sidestepped if Erwin had just died in the assault with everyone else. I wouldn't have minded if that was how he went out, and then the other guy was brought back. That would have made sense. But instead, the main cast basically kills him. I'm sure the author thought, oh, what a genius scene. Everyone's going to be twisting and turning about whether or not that was the right decision, when really, I just disliked the main cast more than I did beforehand. That's not a success. That's injecting cheap drama at the expense of narrative coherence. What happens to pragmatism? What happened to the danger? And it wasn't even a decision based on idealism, because Levi did make the decision after all. He made the obviously wrong, obviously stupid decision for completely idiotic reasons to move the plot in a specific direction. I don't appreciate that. Apparently this is a controversial viewpoint. To that I say, are there really that many hardcore Armin fans out there? Really, guys? Hey, you do you. Your feelings are valid. But to me, he's a mishandled character whose potential never really comes to fruition. Having the same character arc 5 times in a row, get the fuck out of here. Personally, I think Erwin is the best character in the series, except for maybe Hanji. The first time I saw her brutalizing another person, I thought, holy shit, I think I'm in love. Just kidding. But it was entertaining. Too bad she spent the entire final arc squirming under this asshole's thumb, a circumstance that was in no small part helped by one especially bad decision. Good job, Levi. Haha, I'm an asshole. Flashback. I had never thought about what was beyond the walls until then. I'd only spent my days looking at clouds in the sky. Not that strange for a kid 8 or 9 years old to not be thinking about anything. But then you came running to me with a book. You looked like you were having an amazing dream. A dream I couldn't see. That's when I knew for the first time, I wasn't free. I realized that I had been living in a birdcage all that time, and that those freakish things had taken my freedom. The world was so big, but they'd forced me into a tiny cage, and when I realized that, I knew I could never forgive them. So it's Armin's fucking fault. Please forgive him. No, I don't think I will. And with that, the illusion of this being a fair setting completely dies. It already should have died several times over, but at this point, for anyone who's been paying attention, it just shatters into 1,000 pieces. The narrative has an agenda, and it's going to see it fulfilled, no matter how many clumsy or infuriating coincidences it has to ham-fistedly ram through. It may kill off legions of irrelevant peasants, or just anyone that's interesting, but there is a cone of conceptual security around the main cast that will only ever be superficially breached. I mean that in more ways than one, you understand. It even wimps out at its last chance to somewhat redeem itself and let these dipshits bite it. And it's unfortunate. But hey, that's how things turned out. It's a sordid affair, recounting details of this story. It's Naruto, but if Sasuke was more dominant than Naruto. The world according to Sasuke. That's Attack on Titan in 2 sentences. It's bad, and not even in a particularly interesting way. I, personally, find it to be disappointing.